AI Artist, Images, Culture, and the Illusion of Reality. Martin Noble. This book is an original autobiographical, essayistic, and reflective work. The facts, ideas, opinions, and experiences presented herein belong exclusively to the author and are offered as a personal account of his work, exploration, and reflection on generative artificial intelligence, images, and contemporary artistic creation. All trademarks, company names, products, technological platforms, software tools, and other distinctive signs mentioned in this work are the property of their respective owners and are cited solely for descriptive, historical, informational, or critical analysis purposes. Their inclusion does not imply any affiliation, sponsorship, endorsement, or approval by such entities. References to technologies, artificial intelligence systems, generative models, or creative tools are made from a contextual and educational perspective. The content of this book does not constitute technical, legal, professional, or commercial advice. The images included in this work have been generated using artificial intelligence systems or created for artistic and conceptual purposes as part of the author's project. They are not intended to reproduce copyrighted works or to replace original creations by third parties. Any resemblance to real persons, characters, or situations is purely coincidental and unintentional. To those who believed before everything was clear. Prologue, 2022. The moment when images ceased to seem like fiction. In 2022, something began to stand out as I scrolled through the news on my phone. Similar headlines appeared again and again, filling the screen with variations of the same idea. They usually read along the lines of, "This is what a well-known character from popular culture would look like in real life." I was quite surprised to encounter so many stories with that message because generally, the stories I read are rather different and do not tend to repeat in such a way. This type of news began to pique my curiosity because they spoke of characters we all know, characters we have seen in cartoons or popular series. However, the novelty was that they showed them differently, as if they were real people. This made me think about how these images work and why they generate so much interest among people. As I looked at those images, I couldn't help but wonder what effect they really had on the way we perceive popular culture. Previously, an animated or fictional character existed only in a fantasy world, separate from reality. But when those same figures appeared with human features, with shadows, textures, and expressions that seemed real, something changed. It was as if those creations could leap off the screen into our lives, making the intangible feel much closer. I thought about what this implied for the way we consume stories and symbols. Characters that were once flat drawings now showed a face with volume, almost as if they could live among us. This made me question to what extent our emotions toward them might intensify. Could we feel the same way about an animated character who appears to be a flesh and blood person? I realized that this transformation helped many people connect better with those figures, perhaps because our brains respond more directly to images that seem real, even when they know they are not. It also sparked my curiosity about the role artificial intelligence played in all this. These hyper-realistic images were not the product of traditional artistic work, but the result of complex programs and algorithms that managed to combine details to create faces and expressions that look like genuine humans. I was struck by how technology was beginning to blur the line between reality and visual fiction. We no longer relied solely on illustrators or photographers. A machine could create images that fooled both the eye and the mind, fueling our imagination while simultaneously sparking debates about what could be considered truthful or not. At that moment, I thought about the broader cultural impact of this phenomenon. These images were not just entertainment, they were influencing our perceptions, the way we understand who those characters are and what they represent. I also wondered what would happen to traditional artists, whether this type of digital creation would eventually displace human work or instead open new possibilities for creativity to expand. I recalled conversations with friends where some expressed enthusiasm for these images and others showed some apprehension. Some said it was fun to see their favorite characters with human faces, while others feared that this could dehumanize or trivialize the original stories. It became clear to me that there was a mix of emotions and opinions, a sign that we were facing a cultural shift we didn't fully understand yet. but one that promised to shape the future of how we consume and share storytelling and art. The rise of generative imagery, from marginal experiment to everyday phenomenon. The images accompanying those news stories were striking. They were neither traditional drawings nor simple photo montages that one could easily recognize. For instance, in a traditional cartoon drawing, characters have smooth lines, flat colors, and a clearly defined style. In contrast, these images resembled blends between photographs of real people and artistic designs. This combination created an unusual sensation, yet one that felt very real. The main difference was that the characters looked like flesh and blood actors. This means they did not appear as animated cartoons, but rather as photographs of real people who could exist in everyday life. This is significant because, when we see something like this, our brain tries to interpret it as real, even though we know it is not. A clear example is when characters like Mickey Mouse or Bart Simpson are transformed into humans, with skin, hair, and real eyes, without losing their defining features. The Uncanny Valley. Discomfort as a sign of realism. With the arrival of these videos depicting fictional humans so closely resembling real people, a concept called the Uncanny Valley emerged. This term refers to the uncomfortable or strange feeling many people experience when they see images or videos of humans who look almost real but not entirely. To better understand this concept, imagine seeing a robot designed to look like a human being. If the robot is clearly a machine, you don't feel uneasy. But if that robot tries too hard to appear human and almost succeeds, you might feel something strange, like fear or confusion. That is the Uncanny Valley. In the case of generative videos, when the characters closely resemble real people but still show small inconsistencies, such as odd movements or distorted proportions, many viewers feel discomfort. This phenomenon has a psychological explanation. Humans are highly attuned to recognizing other people and their expressions. When something looks nearly human but doesn't behave quite right, the brain detects it and responds with suspicion or rejection. This is why watching computer-generated videos featuring fictional humans that appear real can provoke this uneasy feeling. Although over time, as technology improves, that sensation may diminish because the characters will look increasingly natural and less strange. At what point does an image stop appearing real and begin to unsettle us? Is that discomfort a mistake or a signal? What artificial intelligence is and how it works. A simple explanation before things get complicated. To be able to make my own attempts, I looked up exactly what artificial intelligence, or AI, is and how it works. I realized that AI was not something new, but had existed for several years. I also researched something called the AI winter, which refers to a period in the history of computing when the development of artificial intelligence slowed down due to a lack of significant progress. I found that the first AI-generated image had been produced a long time ago, but there were not many websites offering open access to these tools. I discovered that the earliest attempts to create intelligent machines date back to the 1950s. When scientists began imagining how to make a computer think or learn. For example, one pioneer, Alan Turing, proposed the idea that a machine could simulate human thought if it managed to answer questions indistinguishably from a human, what we now know as the Turing test. I found this intriguing because it's like asking two people something and not being able to tell who is human and who is a machine. I also learned that, in those early days, researchers faced problems such as insufficient computing power and lack of data for machines to learn properly. It was like wanting to teach someone to paint but not having enough colors or brushes to practice with. Because of this, the high expectations for AI gradually deflated, and many promises went unfulfilled, leading to the so-called AI winters when people lost interest or funding to continue its development. A simple example I found is how AI has tried to learn to recognize patterns, something humans do almost without thinking. For instance, when you see a cat, you know it's a cat because you recognize shapes, colors, and features. For a machine to do the same, someone first needs to show it many pictures of cats so it can understand what a cat is. It's like someone showing you many photos, so you learn to identify a particular type of flower. With practice, you improve, but without the right images, you get confused. This is called machine learning, which is an important foundation for modern AI. Moreover, I understood that the situation began to change when technology improved and more data and computing power became available. Now we can create programs that not only follow fixed rules, but also learn from examples, something that used to be very limited. I was also surprised to learn that some AI applications were already functioning in everyday things without many people realizing it, such as email spam filters or voice assistants that recognize simple commands. Reflecting on these historical stages made me realize that AI is not magic or something that appears out of nowhere, but the result of years of trial and error, technological advances, and new ideas that have overcome obstacles. Interestingly, this resembles the way people learn. First we try, then we fail, then we improve with help and practice. AI follows a somewhat similar path, and understanding this made me feel closer to being able to attempt creating my own projects with these tools. How to use basic tools with programming. The first options I found to generate images with AI were platforms like GitHub or Google Colab. These sites offered services where you could make adjustments using programming to create images. This meant you had to manage numbers, codes, and buttons, which was somewhat complicated. Additionally, you needed to know how to write a text called a prompt that indicated what you wanted to appear in the image. For example, if you wanted to see a character with certain features, you had to describe it precisely in words within the prompt. After several attempts with these commands, the images generated were somewhat abstract at first, but as a few minutes passed, the image became clearer and closer to what I had described in the prompt. This surprised me, although at first it didn't seem very exciting because coding to achieve it felt like a lot of work. The prompt is a new creative language. Writing for a machine imagining as a human. The prompt is like a new language for digital artists. Instead of using brushes or cameras, you use words to paint images on the screen. For instance, if a painter wants to depict a sunset, they mix colors and use techniques to create light and shadow. With AI, instead of mixing colors, you have to tell the machine what kind of sunset you want. A red sky with soft clouds, reflected in a calm lake. Every word changes the outcome, just like every brushstroke in a painting. Just as a writer carefully chooses their words to tell a story, here the prompt is the story you tell to create an image. Simply saying, cat, won't suffice if you want a specific cat. You need to specify whether it is large or small, whether it's in a forest or a house, whether it has green or blue eyes. The precision of the prompt determines whether the image is a sharp photo or a blurry smudge. It's like giving instructions to an actor. The clearer they are, the more accurate the character portrayed will be. Creating images with words. In music, a composer provides guidance on rhythm, tone, and style so the band can play a song. Similarly, in creation with AI, you are the composer and the prompt is the score. If you only write vague notes, the AI improvises, but if you write a detailed score, the performance will be faithful to your vision. This turns creation into a dialogue between human and machine, where the written language is the tool that guides digital imagination. The importance of the prompt goes beyond simply requesting an image. It is about learning to speak with AI in a way it understands and responds to creatively. Loose words are not enough. You need to master a new mode of expression. That is why the prompt is an artistic language in itself, which allows human imagination to expand with the help of technology. Each prompt generates a different world, just as each text or painting is unique. The skill to build good prompts is nowadays a fundamental artistic competence. Just as a sculptor shapes marble, we shape the image using words. It is a radical shift in the way of creating that transforms how we see and experience art. Creating videos with AI. In addition to images, I also discovered that it was possible to create videos with this technology. For example, you could generate a looping sequence of images that gradually change the atmosphere throughout the video. However, to achieve this, you needed to leave the computer running all night to produce enough material, since each video frame was generated in a similar way to still images. Early generative videos faced several technical limitations that directly affected the quality and style of the final output. One of the main challenges was the quantity and variety of training data available. The initial models had limited datasets, especially concerning the representation of human anatomy. This caused obvious errors in body proportions, faces, and limbs, which often appeared disproportionate or distorted without any clear pattern. Representing hands, fingers, and joints was one of the greatest challenges. The geometric complexity and diversity of poses meant the models could not accurately capture these parts, which ended up looking confused, with fused fingers or in impossible positions. This problem created an unsettling feeling because, although the image tried to look real, certain details revealed that something was off. Another frequent problem was temporal inconsistency between frames. The body, limbs, and objects would change radically in shape throughout the video, lacking smooth transitions. This produced deformations that looked like errors or strange fusions, as if parts of the body merged or stretched unnaturally. These abrupt changes broke the sense of continuity, contributing to an aesthetic that was both fascinating and destabilizing. The resolution of these videos was also low, which had both advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, the low definition could mask certain geometry and anatomy errors, but on the other, it prevented accurate rendering of fine details like facial features, fingers, or expressions. Thus, the result often appeared blurry or imprecise, with mere suggestions of shapes rather than clear, defined representations. Moreover, the models lacked a genuine understanding of the three-dimensional space implied in human forms. They had no mechanisms to grasp the underlying body structure behind the image, so they merely imitated visual patterns without maintaining any foundational coherence. The absence of solid structural control meant basic rules, such as the correct number of fingers or body symmetry, could not be enforced, increasing the frequency of strange artifacts. These visual artifacts manifested as duplicated limbs, extra fingers, distorted bodies, or merged faces. Poses frequently seemed impossible or unnatural, further amplifying the sense that the video was a strange blend of the real and the artificial. This accumulation of errors and anomalies defined a unique aesthetic, a style that appeared organic yet surreal, even somewhat dreamlike. The overall sensation these images and videos conveyed was one of unstable reality. Although the image was perceived as alive and in motion, its lack of precision generated a strange, disconcerting atmosphere, as if we were witnessing a fluid, distorted version of reality. This ambiguity between the human and the artificial created a new form of visual expression distinct from traditional realism. Over time, the deformations and flaws came to be seen as an emerging form of experimental art. The accidental aesthetic born from technical limitations began to be valued for its ability to evoke unique sensations and challenge conventional notions of image and form. In this way, first-generation generative videos acquired a visual identity characterized by fluid bodies, ambiguous anatomies, and unpredictable movements. Advantages of online server-based tools. Something I found particularly interesting was that these tools operated thanks to online servers. This meant it was not necessary to have a powerful computer to try or use this technology. You only needed to connect to the internet and access the platform from any device. For example, if you used Google Colab, a free Google service, you could leverage the server's capacity to perform calculations and generate images or videos without your own computer having to do all the work. New, more user-friendly tools. While I was exploring these options, which were still quite technical and limited to programmer interfaces, new applications and platforms began to emerge, offering software more accessible to the everyday user. These alternatives did not require programming knowledge or handling complicated code. Some examples I found included Midjourney, DALL-E, and Dreams AI. These tools worked more simply. You just had to write a description in natural language, and they quickly generated an image with a more polished style. These options greatly facilitated access to AI image generation, since anyone interested could experiment without needing to learn programming or understand how servers operated. You simply wrote the prompt with the features you wanted, and within seconds the image was created. Previously, generating an image with artificial intelligence required quite deep technical knowledge. You had to understand how the models worked, how to structure the code, and how to set up an entire working environment on your computer. The learning curve was steep, limiting the use of these technologies to programmers or people with experience in artificial intelligence. It was not just a matter of creativity, but of managing complex tools. Nowadays, interfaces have become much simpler and more intuitive. There is no longer any need to write code or understand advanced algorithms. Just write a phrase, use visual menus, or select options, and the system produces an image in seconds. This allows anyone, regardless of technical background, to create quality visual content without frustration or long learning curves. This ease of use lowers barriers to entry and opens the door to a much broader audience. Consequently, creative speed has increased. It is possible to test many different ideas quickly, experiment with styles or concepts without wasting time on technical configurations. Exploration is encouraged because technology is no longer an obstacle but a tool available to all. The creative democratization stemming from this change includes new user profiles in the digital ecosystem. It is no longer only programmers or AI experts generating content, but also designers, artists, educators, and everyday users seeking to express themselves or communicate with images. This transforms the technical role. Where results were once achieved by programming, now the model is creatively directed through descriptions and simple adjustments. Natural language has become the primary interface. The prompt replaces code as the way to control and guide artificial intelligence. This means creativity centers on the ability to describe, imagine, and direct content generation rather than manipulating technology. Visual creation becomes more accessible, allowing diverse aesthetic styles to emerge, since each user contributes a unique blend of culture, ideas, and experiences. Creative production ceases to depend on large studios or complex technical teams and becomes decentralized. Anyone with access to these tools can create and share high-quality content. The cultural impact is broad, as these images reappear in advertising, contemporary art, education, and social media, influencing various fields and enriching visual diversity in the digital world. The main current challenge is maintaining quality and creative judgment as automatic generation becomes increasingly common. The ease of producing images can lead to saturation or content lacking artistic filtering. Therefore, the creator's role remains essential in selecting, refining, and giving meaning to what artificial intelligence generates, ensuring ongoing value in each work. Reflection on the early steps with creative AI. My first attempts with the older tools taught me that, although artificial intelligence in image generation seemed complex and technical, it was possible to learn and experiment with patience. The shift from managing codes and commands to using simple interfaces with written descriptions made the technology much more accessible. I also learned that to obtain better results, it was necessary to practice prompt writing. For instance, describing colors, the character's pose, or the type of background in detail helped the image resemble more closely what I imagined. Gradually, I understood that a good prompt is key for AI to create images that make sense and look good. The impact and potential of these technologies. Since then, AI image generation has become a very useful tool for those wanting to create art, design characters, or simply play with creativity. The ability to access these technologies from any computer thanks to cloud servers removed many technical barriers. For example, an artist can use these platforms to explore volumes and proportions before building a physical object, or someone writing a story can visualize their characters simply by describing them to the AI, saving time and effort. Thus, the journey from those early abstract images to modern tools is seen as a great advance in the democratization of digital creativity. First AI Film Festival Screening Program. One day, while browsing a news site I liked for its simple design, I came across an announcement that surprised me greatly. The site was just a white page with links to the world's most important news. Its motto was, "Just the news, no nonsense." On that page, I saw a headline that read, "First International Film Festival with AI." For me, this was unexpected because at that time, generative AI technology was still very young, and almost no one was officially using it in film projects. I decided to send an email to participate. A few days later, I received a response saying I had been accepted into the competition. I wanted to do something big for the festival. I had an idea, to shoot a scene on the beach with real actors. The scene would include different characters, like clowns, someone playing piano, and dancers in exotic costumes. The idea was to film this sequence and then use an AI tool called Video to Video to modify the footage. This tool allows changing the original video with the help of artificial intelligence. I knew that to do this I needed some money and time. I only had 1 month to finish, and even though I had no experience directing people, I got some friends to help me. However, I couldn't gather everything necessary to do what I initially planned. As a plan B, I called my neighbor and proposed doing something simpler, just the two of us. The new idea was to tell the story of a mime. I thought the mime was perfect because it reminded me of old silent films, the so-called silent movies. But I wanted my mime to be a futuristic character who played with reality. I told my neighbor to meet for a filming session on Friday the 13th. Unknown dimensions. Creating without knowing exactly what one is creating. The story I called Unknown Dimensions was about a mime who, after leaving work, buys some donuts and looks at them. Suddenly, a kind of portal to another dimension opens right before him. The mime passes through that portal and many strange changes occur in reality. Thanks to the AI video-to-video tool, it was possible to combine the original footage with effects that transformed the scene. The day of filming arrived and the weather changed unexpectedly. The morning was full of storms with strong winds and heavy rain. The day before had been sunny, so I thought my neighbor would cancel the shoot. Without his help, I couldn't finish the project, and there was only 1 week left to submit. Still, I prepared by putting on white overalls, a striped shirt, makeup, and a pink hat. In the afternoon, when the weather improved a bit, I managed to convince my neighbor to meet later that same day. When we arrived at the shooting location, a vacant lot where a supermarket used to be, the wind was still strong, but it was no longer raining. We started filming following the script. The wind gave an unexpected feeling for the story we wanted to tell. I held a bag of donuts, which was important for the scene, and at the right moment I looked through it and mimicked the opening of the portal. We had little time because night was coming, so we finished in about 3 hours with a shot on the beach. At the end of filming, we saw some strange lights in the sky. My neighbor said they looked like UFOs, though they were probably drones, which lately have been flying inexplicably in rural areas. I returned home with sand on my clothes and my makeup nearly erased. We had finished shooting, only processing the videos with AI remained. However, I had an unpleasant surprise. I lost my phone during filming and couldn't find it anywhere. Still, I thought everything had to be worth it. The next day, with sunny weather again, I began editing the video and felt something changing. It was as if the portal from the story had passed through me as well. In researching mimes, I discovered there had been a famous artist named Marcel Marceau. His most well-known act was precisely walking against the wind. I found it curious because our story dealt with something very similar, and I hadn't known that when we filmed. Finally, we submitted our short film to the festival. We didn't win any awards, but I felt that something new had begun. I wanted to keep exploring all the possibilities that using AI in filmmaking offers. Creating for others. When experimentation becomes work. At first, generative AI was not a means to earn income, but a tool to explore ideas I had previously only imagined. The invisible cost of experimenting. Working with generative AI often means relying on subscription systems based on credits. Every generation attempt consumes resources, and when starting out, the desired result rarely appears on the first try. This entails repeating processes, adjusting instructions, and spending credits without immediate outcomes. Added to this is the waiting time. Each image or video requires minutes of processing, a pause reminiscent of old photographic processes, where creation was not instantaneous but gradual. Working with generative AI involved juggling several costs simultaneously: subscriptions, credits, and editing tools. For a long time, this represented a constant expense without clear income. Still, I continued creating with the resources available. That period of experimentation, marked by technical and economic limitations, was key to understanding how to professionalize my work with artificial intelligence. The emerging AI community. The AI community began small and fragmented. In its early days, only a few filmmakers, designers, and technical enthusiasts explored these tools, almost always from specialized spaces little visible to the general public. AI was a marginal territory, hard to understand and even harder to use without prior knowledge. From the beginning, I closely followed every new development. The tools updated relentlessly, versions 1, 2, 3, alpha and beta editions, new models that seemed to replace one another at an impossible speed to assimilate. The constant feeling was that everything was advancing faster than any person could process. At times, it seemed humans were trying to understand complex systems with the same disadvantage an ant would have trying to comprehend the internet. As creative use of AI grew, new ways of self-identification began to emerge. Some adopted the term AI artist, others preferred creative technologists. While many identified as generalists, people capable of moving between several technical and artistic disciplines. These names not only describe skills but an emerging identity, those who create in collaboration with intelligent systems. Visual culture and cyberpunk aesthetics. This expansion coincided with a familiar sensation, living inside an imaginary world that before existed only in science fiction. Cyberpunk, with its cities saturated by technology, neon lights, invisible networks, and an uneasy coexistence between humans and machines, ceased to be a distant fantasy. In creative and urban realms, AI tools began to be used to imagine architectures, spaces, and environments not yet built. Generative models allowed modifications of known reality to explore possible variations before construction. Online communities and collective creation. Over time, the AI community became much more visible on the internet. Groups and servers grew exponentially, one of the most representative being Midjourney. There, thousands shared images generated by AI daily, absurd scenes, impossible worlds, characters with textures and styles never seen before. If someone had an interesting idea, comments and suggestions to improve it arrived quickly. I recall a specific case. I wanted to generate the image of a giraffe climbing a skyscraper but couldn't get the scene to work. The AI seemed not to understand the action. I posted the problem in the community, and soon dozens of attempts, tweaks, and suggestions appeared until someone found an effective prompt. Since then, whenever such an image appears, it's likely the result of that collective learning. Trends, memes, and normalization. As these communities grew, cultural trends emerged. Some images and videos went viral, becoming recurring memes. Examples like public figures awkwardly recreated or iconic scenes reinterpreted by generative models helped AI stop being perceived as exclusive to researchers and began becoming part of everyday entertainment. AI integrated into everyday life. Today, the AI community is no longer a small group. Generative tools are integrated into common applications and everyday devices. From a mobile phone, it is possible to generate images, write texts, or create music without advanced technical knowledge. Many of these functions operate in the background: voice assistants, personalized recommendations, navigation systems, home automation, or adaptive educational platforms. Most people do not think about the complexity behind these systems, but their impact is constant. AI adjusts routes, filters information, optimizes resources, and supports daily decisions. In sectors like health, education, and commerce, these technologies are already part of normal workflows. The emerging AI community is essentially a living ecosystem. Within it, artists, technologists, and curious users coexist. Each new tool, shared idea, and unexpected use expands that universe. Chatbots as a means of communication. Dialogue, presence, and creative mediation. When I began using chatbots like ChatGPT, my intention was purely functional. I used them as tools to help build prompts and develop scenes for audiovisual projects I was working on. At that time, interaction was limited to writing instructions and receiving textual responses that served as creative support for scripts and visual ideas. However, this relationship changed significantly with the introduction of real-time voice communication features. Being able to speak directly with the chatbot transformed the experience into something more fluid and intimate. The conversation stopped feeling like a simple technical query and began to seem like a continuous, almost spontaneous exchange, where the AI responded at the same pace ideas were formed. I wanted to bring this dynamic to other contexts, especially video games. In one of my first tests, I recorded live gameplay while interacting by voice with the chatbot. Instead of being an external assistant, the system integrated as an invisible companion, commenting on what was happening on screen, providing curious facts, and reacting to my observations as I progressed through the game. During these sessions, I asked questions that went beyond the immediate. I asked it to imagine improvements to classic games, explain the background of certain scenarios, or analyze character dialogues to better understand the developer's narrative intent. This form of interaction expanded the gaming experience, not only in terms of information but also in the way of interpreting and inhabiting the virtual world. These experiences reveal a deeper shift. Chatbots have ceased being simple automated assistants to become mediators of communication and creation. They no longer just answer questions. They accompany processes, engage in dialogue, propose ideas, and actively participate in meaning-making. Their presence extends across multiple fields, from education and entertainment to art and cultural production, redefining how humans relate to machines through language. And the evolution of chatbots as interlocutors sets a clear boundary between creative exploration and the responsible use of these technologies. That boundary marks the point where AI ceases to be a game. When AI enters practice, responsibility, expectations, and real limits. At one point, some video generation models underwent significant updates, although they remained limited to creating very short clips, just a few seconds long. I wanted to go a step further and began experimenting by combining these short clips to make longer videos. The idea was for these small pieces to fit together well to form a coherent sequence. However, this involved a lot of work because each generated video could only last up to 4 seconds. Therefore, to complete just 1 minute of video, I had to generate many clips and join them all. It didn't always turn out well. Sometimes it took several tries to get a take I liked. It was a slow and sometimes frustrating process, but it was necessary for progress. Who is responsible when an image is no longer just an experiment? Where does the tool end and human decision begin? The challenge of making a music video. One day, I heard a song by a fairly well-known content creator on YouTube and thought it would be interesting to try making a music video for that song. Until then, I hadn't made long videos with those short clips because the time and effort required were very large, but I decided to give it a try and uploaded the video online. This project made me realize something important. No one else was offering this kind of service with AI-generated videos. That led me to experiment more, seeking out artists on social networks to create other fragments of music videos. Working with videos and human faces. When I started, there were no tools that allowed straightforward integration of real people into AI-generated videos. So I had to follow an additional procedure. First, take photos or videos of the people's faces, then manually edit them to process with artificial intelligence, and finally achieve motion of those faces. It was a long and somewhat complicated process. Now, however, some applications make it much easier to insert real people into generated videos. This saves significant time and effort for those who want to create this kind of content. Creating a new business model. Although I had the idea to create these music videos and other work with generative AI, I had no clear business model. I wondered how I could sell something that no one else was trying to offer. There was no reference or example to follow. In addition, I wasn't sure if I could actually generate income with this technology that was still in its early stages. Despite that, I decided to try. I posted an ad offering this service on a well-known freelance work platform. At that time, there were barely a couple of ads with similar services, nothing popular or widespread. The first client and the video challenge. During the first month, I didn't receive much interest, but then came the first message. An artist wanted a music video. It was very exciting to get that first real order, as it meant my first income working with generative AI. This project was a real challenge. What I was offering was to show people in the video using AI, something that was not yet technically easy or common. I had to create images of the client in the video, make many versions to show different styles and forms until they were satisfied with the result. The process was like painting a portrait of a king, very careful and repetitive, adjusting details each time. It took me about 15 days to complete a video that was consistent and well presented. More clients and complex work. After that initial success, more clients from around the world started to arrive. Every job I received with generative AI was a new different challenge. Sometimes they asked for long videos of several minutes, for example 3 to 4 minutes, when the tools only allowed the generation of short clips of 4 to 6 seconds. This meant I had to create many small pieces and join them to make full coherent videos. It was work that demanded patience and great attention to detail. Each project had its own complexity and required finding creative and technical ways to ensure the video looked good despite the software limitations. Work in stories as an AI artist for all kinds of clients. When I started offering content creation services using artificial intelligence, AI, I noticed that many individuals and companies were also exploring this technology for their projects. Although it was relatively easy to create instructions or prompts for AI to generate images, achieving quality standard results required some experience. This led many clients to seek someone who already knew how to operate these programs effectively. At first, I didn't know how much to charge because there were no clear references on pricing or how to structure the service. My first clients were very diverse. Some were independent artists needing help with creative direction and creating images with AI. I also worked with companies wanting to use AI for advertising, such as creating images of their apps or showcasing products in eye-catching visuals. I even received personal requests such as portraying people who had passed away for special projects. There were also opportunities to create campaigns for charitable organizations, using AI-generated images to support social causes. The versatility of AI services was great and opened many creative possibilities. The challenge of communication with clients and using ChatGPT. Most requests I received were for music videos. My ad mainly focused on that service. At first, communication with clients was very organic, but that also caused interruptions and delays in negotiations. People who have worked in design or similar services usually understand that coordinating well with clients is a challenge. Therefore, I decided to try something different to improve this aspect. Using ChatGPT to communicate professionally and clearly with them. Using ChatGPT made communication much easier and sped up the process. I was at a stage when these chatbots were still not well known, so many clients didn't even realize they were talking to a program and not directly to me. There was no problem with that, and I believe starting to use AI for interaction early on was one of the reasons for my initial success. A year later, when chatbots became common, I saw videos on social media where people joked about using AI-generated responses to communicate, even to flirt. It reminded me of what I had done, and I thought that this form of interaction was becoming normal in many everyday conversations. Work, money, and automation. The uncomfortable question nobody wanted to ask. Starting to earn money while learning to work with generative AI was an unexpected experience. Income was not the initial goal, but it allowed me to cover tool costs and continue experimenting without slowing down the creative process. One such job was an experimental campaign for a dating app where I developed animated avatars that acted as virtual coaches. At that time, creating believable visual representations was a complex process requiring multiple tests to avoid distortions and errors. Working with avatars demanded the same care as traditional portraiture. Observe, adjust, and repeat until the image conveyed something recognizable. Although it was a technical process, I understood it as an extension of artistic work, now mediated by generative systems, special stories, and emotional projects. One of the most striking stories I experienced was a client who asked me to create a video with an animated portrait of his deceased father-in-law. The objective was for the video to convey a message to his daughter, who was about to get married, in which he gave his blessing for the marriage. Beyond the emotional impact, what surprised me was discovering how some people turn to these services for such significant acts. Growth as a freelancer and the need to expand the team. As an independent worker, a time came when I had so many assignments that I could no longer manage projects alone. My schedule became saturated and I had to announce that I was looking for people interested in working with me using generative AI. The main obstacle was the length of the video generation process, which slowed everything down. The most labor-intensive task was crafting the prompts carefully so that the AI would generate coherent images and videos. In addition, it was necessary to curate the content to ensure visual continuity between videos. As a result, I needed help to maintain production and meet delivery deadlines. Summary of the process and experience to date. Overall, working as an AI artist has been continuous learning and an adventure full of technical and creative challenges. The process demands patience and precision to create quality visual content and coordinate well with clients with very varied expectations. It also requires openness to try new technologies and forms of communication, as I learned with the use of chatbots to improve interaction. The variety of projects shows that AI can be applied in many contexts, from commercial to personal and emotional. The evolution of technology and processes. Gradually, technology improved and new applications emerged that made it easier to work with generative AI for video. Tools that allowed mixing real people with generated images already existed, helping me optimize the process. Early appearances of realistic fictional humans. At the beginning of 2023, the world of generative videos was quite early and limited. Most advances were on platforms like GitHub and Google Colab, where programmers and enthusiasts could experiment with AI models to create videos. At that time, results were not realistic. Videos had a somewhat caricatured effect where recorded images transformed into sequences with constant changes in vivid, almost psychedelic colors. These types of generative videos often played in loops, showing patterns that changed continuously without resembling real humans. The technology was in its early phases but already offered an interesting glimpse of the future. At that time, this kind of generative video was far from perfect. For instance, a video could show human figures changing shape or deforming strangely, especially in hands or feet. Despite these imperfections, it was clear the technology was advancing rapidly. Programmers were modeling something close to human form and movement, though with significant limitations. The idea of using AI to create fictional humans in video still felt distant, but was beginning to take shape. The beer commercial that marked a before and after. A key moment in this story was the creation of a generative beer commercial. This ad became important news among those interested in AI and video generation. The advertisement was very popular because it was one of the first cases showing computer-generated fictional humans with a fairly realistic appearance. Although they still had some deformities, the level of realism was much greater than previous videos. This commercial represented a major innovation because it showed interaction between fictional characters who looked like real people, something never before seen in generative videos. To better imagine it, think of a group of people at a party. In the commercial, these people were not real actors but created by the computer in real time. They moved, talked, and interacted dynamically. This surprised many and made it hard to believe it was possible. The creation of this commercial also generated mixed feelings. For some, seeing AI-generated humans so realistically was exciting and revolutionary. For others, it was unsettling and strange because the image was almost real, but not quite. This difference in perception marked a profound change in how we understand digital content. How generative video technology has evolved since then. Although in early 2023, generative videos with fictional humans had many imperfections, technology has progressed quickly. Every new model aims to eliminate body deformities and improve movement and facial expressions. For example, to make a video look more realistic, developers work on improving resolution and details of skin, hair, and clothing. There is also a strong focus on ensuring characters have natural movements and don't appear stiff or uncoordinated. This is done with techniques that analyze how real people walk, talk, and express emotions, transferring that knowledge to computer-generated humans. A practical way for those wanting to experiment with this technology is to learn how to use open-source tools and online platforms. These allow the creation of generative videos starting from images or short clips and applying filters or models to transform content. Though initially somewhat complicated, with practice it's possible to achieve surprising results. For instance, a user can record a video of themselves speaking and use a model that transforms their face into a completely fictional one that moves exactly like them. Challenges that remain in creating realistic fictional humans in video. Despite advances, creating fictional humans that look exactly like real people remains a major challenge. AI must replicate not only physical appearance but also natural movement, micro-expressions, and social interaction. One main problem is the generation of limbs or body parts that deform or disappear in video. This happens because the system still doesn't fully understand how a hand or foot should look in different positions. Another difficulty lies in synchronizing audio with lip movements so the character appears to be speaking fluently. Additionally, interaction between multiple fictional characters is complicated. For two computer-generated humans to look like they are conversing or reacting to one another, the system must calculate many variables simultaneously. The social and cultural impact of AI-generated humans. The emergence of videos with realistic fictional humans not only affects the technological world but also has significant social and cultural impact. On one hand, this technology can revolutionize industries like advertising, film, and video games by allowing the creation of characters without real actors. This can reduce costs and open new storytelling forms. However, it also raises difficult questions about authenticity, ethics, and trust in digital media. For example, if a video can show people who don't actually exist, saying things they never said, how can we know what is real and what is not? This has implications for information, fake news, and media manipulation. Therefore, understanding this technology's development and concepts such as the Uncanny Valley is essential to prepare for upcoming changes. AI-generated fictional humans will become increasingly common, and learning to distinguish and use them responsibly will be a key skill in the near future. The appearance of AI-created fictional humans increasingly blurs the line between real and artificial, complicating how individuals perceive the world around them. In media like advertising and social networks, synthetic avatars are used not only as visual tools but also as brand ambassadors or influencers with no physical existence. These representations can be designed with specific personalities, convincing backstories, and carefully crafted aesthetics, creating identities independent of any real person and adaptable without limits to market needs or desired narratives. The construction of artificial identities not only redefines how content is presented but also influences popular culture. Fictional humans shape visual trends and narrative styles in digital entertainment. By creating characters with perfect or ideal appearances and behaviors, these identities can impose aesthetic standards that affect perceptions of beauty and authenticity in society. The public begins to question the truthfulness of what they see, wondering what is genuine and what is the product of carefully orchestrated digital fabrication. The emotional connection some users establish with these synthetic entities is another relevant phenomenon. Despite being created by code, certain fictional characters manage to generate effective bonds and loyalty among followers. This could change how people experience human connection, as they have the option to relate to beings without the complexities or flaws of real humans. Furthermore, these artificial identities have the advantage of not aging, not making public mistakes, nor causing controversies that could affect social perception, granting them almost perfect image control. The use of AI-generated faces and personalities without human consent poses serious ethical challenges. A debate arises around respect for identity and privacy, since sometimes these fictional humans may be based on features of real people or use characteristics that cause intentional or unintentional confusion. Society is undergoing a progressive normalization process, where interacting with these digital creations becomes increasingly common and accepted. However, this normalization is not uniform and provokes diverse responses, from fascination and curiosity about technological possibilities to distrust and criticism regarding the social impact of living in an environment where the real blends indiscriminately with the fabricated. The impact on self-image is also considerable. When people compare themselves to digitally created perfect humans, they may feel pressure or insecurity about their own appearances and identities. This comparison with unreachable ideals can affect mental health and self-esteem, exacerbating social issues related to body image and personal acceptance. At the same time, new media narratives featuring non-human entities introduce a shift in the traditional notion of reality, as digital reality gains weight compared to the physical, affecting how individuals experience their surroundings and construct meaning about who they are and how they fit into the world. Generative models in their early stage. In the early days of generative models, significant growth was seen in companies developing these technologies. These firms released to the public their first models capable of creating simulations of reality. For instance, there were text-to-video and text-to-image models, meaning that by merely typing a description, artificial intelligence could generate related images or videos. Among the most popular tools for the general public were Runway and Midjourney. In the field of generative music, a platform called Suno allowed users to create short songs. The interesting aspect of Suno was that users could input lyrics in the prompt and the model generated lyrical songs corresponding to that text. This combination of text, image, video, and generative music formed the foundation of the surge in these new technologies, sparking excitement in many people. Previously, the creation of content in text, image, video, and music happened entirely independently. Each medium required specific tools and skills. A writer needed a word processor, a graphic designer used drawing software, a video editor depended on specialized software, and a musician had to handle distinct equipment or programs. These fragmented processes made production slow, costly, and demanded multidisciplinary teams for complex projects. There was no integrated pipeline that allowed developing an idea across multiple formats simultaneously without passing through multiple incompatible platforms and formats. With the advancement of generative platforms, this reality began to change. Tools emerged that could integrate the creation of various types of content from a single interface, enabling one user, without expertise in all areas, to design images, videos, and music from the same starting point: language. Writing an idea became the first step toward generating complete multimedia creations. That same phrase or textual description could transform into a static image, an animated clip, and even an accompanying musical piece, all without leaving the platform. This facilitated creativity to flow more naturally and organically without the technical barriers that previously separated each medium. The key was in integrating creative workflows, where content was no longer conceived as isolated pieces but as components of a complete experience. Narrative ceased to be limited to words or static images. Now, a story could be accompanied by movement, visual effects, and music, synchronized with the emotion of the tale, creating a multisensory environment. Thus, production shifted from being the sum of independent parts to the conception of a simultaneous, coherent experience in which each element reinforced the overall message intended to be communicated. By reducing technical complexity, creators gained speed and control. Previously, the progression from idea to result could take days or weeks and required coordinating specialized talent across different fields. Unified platforms simplified this process. The written concept could quickly become a visual and auditory draft, facilitating the testing of variations, adjustment of details, and more agile project development. This convergence gave rise to new hybrid formats blending cinema, art, digital design, and music in ways never seen before. Not only were illustrative videos with soundtracks created, but also interactive works inviting users to explore different sensory layers. Accessibility to these tools made it possible for individuals, without large teams or advanced technical knowledge, to produce complex, professional projects. Creativity ceased to be limited by mastery of specific programs and instead focused on the vision and message the creator wished to convey. The initial experience with generative platforms. During this stage, most of these platforms were still in beta. This meant they were trial versions, still in development, with many limitations but open for some users to experiment and provide feedback. For most, interacting with these tools happened through Discord, a chat platform especially used for communication and managing generation requests. Curiously, on social networks like X, formerly Twitter, news about new companies launching innovative tools appeared continually. Each could do something another could not, generating a feeling of competition and constant progress. Many of these platforms offered free access initially to attract more users and gather large amounts of data and opinions. Therefore, it was common for people without prior AI experience to join the exploration. The sensation was one of discovering something new and powerful, with no manuals or clear instructions, just playing with functions and observing what happened. Users navigated among options that changed constantly. New versions came with visible errors and limitations, but instead of driving them away, that fragility fostered a unique connection. Bugs and unexpected results were part of the fun, a reminder that this was technology in its infancy. People uploaded resulting images, videos, and music to social media and forums, becoming narrators of their technological discoveries. This constant exchange of results and experiences strengthened a sense of belonging to a special group, identified as early adopters of a digital revolution. User feedback had real impact. Developers listened and modified platforms week by week. Updates brought surprises and new functionalities tried immediately. Each change was a visible step towards something better, and this simultaneous evolution kept expectations alive. Beyond technical polish, the experience felt more human and close, with ongoing dialogue between creators and users. It was a time when many had their first real encounter with creative artificial intelligence, marking an unforgettable generational memory. An uncommon company, Full-Journey AI. Among these new companies, one stood out for something special. It was called Full-Journey AI and was founded by a former boxer named Charles McCarthy. Beyond his sports career, McCarthy had a deep interest in programming and technology. With that uncommon blend of physical discipline and technical vision, Charles McCarthy decided to create this company while still having only a few users on his server. He personally engaged in community conversations through chat, making interactions close and personal. At that time, these tools felt strange to me, as there were very few people actively using them. There was a peculiar sensation, as if we were exploring an unknown territory. The most striking aspect of the platform was that, lacking regulation or censorship, it could generate any kind of content without restrictions. A small group of creative pioneers gathered there to develop all kinds of ideas, making the experience especially exciting. Technical limitations and personal experiences. One noticeable thing in those days was that the technology was still limited. Generated videos were often distorted or unclear, yet it was already possible to visualize ideas as short videos, a significant advance. One concrete example, I would join the server at dawn when no one else was using it. This happened because the service depended on shared GPUs to generate images, and during peak hours these resources were saturated. Some users abused this by creating many videos simultaneously. Thus, in quiet hours, it was possible to experiment more freely and without interruptions. I took advantage of this time to test varied ideas, from images of animals doing strange things or combining different species, to objects and environments that made no logical sense but were interesting to explore. I also experimented with images of celebrities or people engaging in unusual activities. The servers running these creations were not common computers, but data centers filled with specialized hardware, mainly GPUs. A GPU is like the engine that makes it possible for images and videos to form quickly and with detail. It is not just any computer component, but a device designed for highly specific and fast calculations, ideal for working with graphics, video, or even text. These GPUs were not dedicated to a single person, but shared among many users simultaneously. This happened because having a powerful GPU for each person would be too costly and wasteful, as not everyone uses the service equally or at maximum capacity all the time. Instead, platforms distributed the capacity of these GPUs among several users, adjusting resources according to the number of connected users and how much they used the system. When there were few users, each had a good share of power for their creations. But during peak hours, the capacity was split into many smaller portions, slowing the process. This also meant that when many people tried to generate videos at the same time, queues formed. One had to wait for GPUs to finish previous tasks before starting theirs. So, if you entered during high demand, the wait could be long, or video quality might drop to save time and serve more users. Higher tier plans offered advantages like access to faster or less saturated GPUs, guaranteeing quicker generation and better resolution. However, for those using free or cheaper options, the experience was variable. One day a video could generate quickly, another one had to wait or accept less detail. The curious thing is that all this work did not happen on your own device. The computer you used to connect simply sent instructions to the remote data center where the GPUs were located. There, on those servers, all the calculations needed to shape the image or video took place. Then the result was sent back to your screen. This had advantages. You could use modest equipment and still get professional results. Creative freedom without filters. a brief moment before the rules arrived. At that time, commercial models had no filters to censor content, allowing users almost total freedom. That changed in later versions, which included measures to prevent the creation of certain types of content. For example, I experimented with radical ideas like recreating the Beatles with firearms. I also experimented with controversial reinterpretations of classical artworks that explored themes of the body and realism, which at the time were technically possible due to the lack of content filters. In that regulatory void, there were no clear laws or legal frameworks defining the appropriate use of generative artificial intelligence. Although some users saw this freedom as a unique opportunity to innovate, others began to question the ethical implications of generating violent, misleading, or sensitive-themed images and texts. This emerging debate reflected a clash between technological capability and social responsibility, where the risk of abuse became increasingly apparent. Some examples revealed the blurry line between freedom of expression and potential violations of rights or collective values. Responsibility for generated content was unclear. It was not evident whether it lay with the creator, the platform, or the model developers. This ambiguity raised fundamental questions. Who was accountable for harm or controversy caused by an uncontrolled generated image? At that moment, social awareness began to grow slowly, with users and specialists warning about possible collateral damage. This awakening led platforms to progressively implement moderation and censorship mechanisms to control certain content, even though doing so sacrificed some of the freedoms that had initially driven shared creativity. With these first measures, a new challenge arose, finding the balance between artistic expression and social protection. Censorship tightened, but was also necessary to avoid harming vulnerable communities. However, this foundational stage of creative AI left an indelible mark, as it defined the ethical and social bases that would guide the responsible development and use of these technologies in the future. The initial openness revealed a world of possibilities, but also opened the door to a debate that continues to unfold today. Hollywood versus AI. During the rise of generative image and text models, many AI tools were trained with vast volumes of data that included material from well-known Hollywood franchises. Characters, visual styles, narrative universes, and distinctive elements of intellectual properties like Batman, Star Wars, or Marvel appeared reflected in creations generated by these systems, even when not explicitly requested. The use of this data without clear licenses sparked legal and ethical conflicts between AI companies and rights holders. Film studios and publishers argued that their protected works had been used to train models without consent, resulting in stylistic reproductions and clearly recognizable characters that affected control over their brands and creative universes. Cases like Batman showed how models could recreate characters, aesthetics, and narratives nearly identically, raising copyright infringement risks and brand dilution. This forced many platforms to implement filters, usage restrictions, and new data training policies. The conflict marked a turning point in the relationship between generative AI and intellectual property, driving debates about transparency, data licensing, creator compensation, and the legal limits of model training. Intellectual property and strikes. The conflict between generative AI and intellectual property intensified with actors' strikes in Hollywood, especially in Los Angeles, where performers and unions like SAG-AFTRA demanded protection against the use of their voices, faces, and performances by AI technologies. Actors denounced that studios and platforms could scan their digital identities, their image, gestures, voice, and expressions to create synthetic replicas without consent or fair compensation. This opened the possibility of reusing their presence in future productions without their real participation, affecting both their labor rights and control over their public image. The strikes brought the need for clearer contracts, explicit consent, and legal limits on biometric data use to the forefront. Performers demanded that any AI use of their identity be transparent, negotiated, and remunerated, preventing indefinite exploitation of their image. This movement set a precedent in the entertainment industry, establishing that AI must respect not only franchise intellectual property, but also the individual rights of creators and artists who bring those universes to life. Generative music. The infinite radio. At an interesting moment in the development of generative music, there emerged an innovation called generative radio. This was created by a company named Stable Diffusion. The main idea behind this radio was to broadcast generative music 24 hours a day. What made this radio special was that it never repeated exactly the same song. Instead, it produced unique and different melodies all the time. This meant the music was always changing and authentic. The concept was quite surprising because it allowed one to imagine a future in which a radio could create music depending on how you felt at that moment. This meant that music could adapt to your emotions. While listening to this radio, I sometimes found myself dancing in front of the screen. The sounds were strange but fascinating, and the experience of dancing to music generated instantly felt almost like living something new and different. Although the idea seemed great, it did not attract much attention from the general public or the media. No one really tried to expand or improve it much afterward, with one exception. A company called Suno AI launched a slightly different generative radio. This radio operates democratically. People in the chat can vote for a musical genre among several options. In the end, the AI combines the voted genres to create a new song that is played at that moment. According to the AI, this system where everyone votes and chooses could be how we consume more content in the future. This would apply not only to music but also to other media like film. Imagine that instead of one person deciding which movie to show, all viewers together make choices to create the final experience. Generative music, living sound in the AI era. Generative music is unlike a traditional song that is recorded and always sounds the same. Every time someone tunes into that radio, the song playing is entirely new, created in real time by AI. No two plays are alike because the music composes itself while the user listens. Thus, each experience is unique and fleeting, a work that exists only in that moment and place. In this sense, generative music can adapt to different contexts or emotions without anyone needing to stop and make changes. For example, imagine a video game where the music changes according to the player's actions. If the player explores a quiet place, the sounds will be soft and relaxing, but if there is danger or a battle, the rhythms speed up and become more intense. The music isn't fixed, it is part of the environment that breathes with what happens in the virtual story. This implies the end of the closed format, where a song has a defined beginning, middle, and end. Instead, music becomes a living experience, a constant flow without predetermined cuts. Listeners no longer consume music passively, but participate in it, influencing the work without needing to be musicians or experts. The artist's role changes. Rather than creating complete songs, they design the rules and parameters that will allow AI to generate varied and adaptable compositions. In the industry, this opens the door to different business models, such as subscriptions for personalized music that changes based on each user's preferences and contexts. Music's function shifts from a fixed product to a dynamic service. Instead of selling songs, experiences are sold, soundscapes that never repeat and adapt to every life moment or need of the listener. The audience takes an active creative role, almost as co-creators of the work. The relationship with sound is direct and ever-changing. Music lives, grows, and mutates with each play. This not only revolutionizes how music is created and consumed, but also redefines how we understand emotional connection with it, transforming music into a living, personal encounter that evolves. Never the same, always new. This content spreads rapidly through social networks and digital platforms, facilitating massive dissemination. The ease of sharing and replicating works creates a simultaneous collective experience where multiple users worldwide connect with the same material at once, fostering a sense of global community. Cultural democratization manifests in independence from large studios or traditional media, allowing diverse voices to emerge from different cultures, traditions, and perspectives. Thus, content ceases to be exclusive to certain groups and becomes an open space for plural and horizontal expression. The album with every word in the dictionary, a wild generative idea. When you start using tools that help create new ideas, it is common to want to push further and try very ambitious things. In generative music communities, I saw people using these programs in many different ways. Some made songs with nonsensical or repetitive lyrics. I remember someone who constantly created short songs with the phrase "praise money," repeated over and over, placing them in every possible musical style. It was amusing to see how their songs appeared in real time on the page, as if they were spamming that phrase non-stop. This inspired me to take the idea further. I thought about creating a gigantic library of songs, one for every word in the dictionary. The idea was very ambitious and somewhat crazy at the same time. For example, for the word tree, I wanted the song not only to make sense, but also to sound like a tree. That meant the melody could represent leaves moving, branches, or the wind in an abstract way, but when listening, it would evoke the image of a tree. I wanted to do this for every word, seeking that each song was unique and related to the word's meaning. At the time, this seemed possible because the technology allowed unlimited song generation. I took the time to calculate how long it would take to create all those songs and was determined to carry it out. However, just as I was preparing to start, the platforms changed their rules. They began charging for every song generated, with payment plans and a credit system. This made my project too expensive and complicated to realize. So, I contacted the founder and CEO of Suno AI to share my idea and ask for help. I explained that I needed to generate more than 10,000 songs called chirps on that platform to complete my library. I'm not sure if the idea seemed radical to him, but he responded by asking for details about the project and explaining the cost to make it real. The price was very high, and for that reason, I decided to abandon the idea, at least for the moment. Virtual singers. Thinking about singers created by robots or artificial intelligence can sound like something out of a science fiction movie. For a long time, this idea existed only as a technological fantasy. However, as I began to see these possibilities take shape, I realized they were closer to reality than ever before. So I decided to conduct my own experiment to create a virtual artist. I didn't think much about the name and chose Rebecca Jasmine. Using automatic music generation tools, I made a short music video for her. Although the videos were quite simple and Rebecca looked a little strange, the idea remained as a seed for a better future. I wanted to improve the project as technologies advanced and the quality of the music and video improved over time. Later, I learned I was not the only one working on this. Others began to appear, creating virtual artists who produced original songs. However, not all of these songs were well received. Many traditional musicians and artists began to show rejection towards these automated creations because they felt it devalued musical art. From my point of view, I thought this kind of experiment has to continue in some way because it opens new possibilities. The emergence of virtual singers also poses an important challenge in how the creative process in music is valued. Traditionally, the human artist brings not only their voice but also personal experiences, lived emotions, and a unique interpretation based on their history. The creation of musical content through artificial intelligence can generate technically perfect works, but the absence of a human soul behind them leads some to question whether it can truly be considered art. This opens a debate about the importance of emotional authenticity versus technical perfection. Likewise, the evolution of virtual singers changes how careers are built in the industry. A traditional artist must invest years in training, touring, and building a solid fan base. In contrast, a virtual singer can be modified, updated, or adapted in a matter of minutes to suit new trends or genres without physical or emotional wear. Furthermore, there is a significant impact on the relationship between fans and artists. Interaction with a virtual singer can be designed to be close, personalized, and even more intense thanks to augmented reality technology and interactive devices. However, since it is not a human being, this connection may lack genuine reciprocity, turning the experience into something more commercial and less emotional. The fan base could fragment between those who value innovation and those who seek a real human bond. The possibility also arises that music will cease to be a form of personal expression and become an almost industrial product, created and optimized for mass consumption, regardless of its message or artistic value. The capacity to produce endless songs with virtual voices could saturate the market and shift the focus of music as art toward mere digital marketing. At the same time, the technology behind virtual singers drives advances in other creative areas such as composition, production, and distribution. AI tools not only generate voices but also lyrics, melodies, and arrangements, accelerating the creative process and making music accessible to people without advanced technical knowledge. This democratizes access to music production, but also shifts professionalization toward new roles like programming, character design, and digital identity management. Streaming platforms and social networks increase their prominence by offering ideal spaces for the dissemination of virtual singers. Business models focus more on managing digital brands, selling exclusive experiences, and personalized content rather than simply selling albums or concert tickets. This creates a more fragmented music industry, with segmented micro-audiences and monetization based on algorithms and data. Finally, the future of music with virtual singers opens new territory for creative exploration and innovation. The evolution toward increasingly digital music raises profound questions about the very nature of art and human expression. Eden 2, a musical project between a human and artificial intelligence. After creating the concept of Rebecca Jasmine, a singer based on generative artificial intelligence, I began writing songs that she could perform. I wanted her lyrics to reflect the feelings and thoughts of this generation and the current moment in the world. The idea was that Rebecca would not just be another singer, but would function as a kind of AI agent with an artistic role. In many parts of the world, people were already beginning to have virtual AI companions with whom they talked and shared intimate things, almost as if they were real friends. For example, there were news stories about people marrying an AI or telling it all their problems. With this in mind, I wanted Rebecca to be the collective voice of an AI, conveying a message to humans from the perspective of that intelligence. To present Rebecca, I created some music videos conceived for her as a soloist. We made pop songs like Music is Dead, AI Has Arrived, which expresses the feeling that the music industry is declining due to new technologies that seem to diminish the value of traditional artists. I also composed Off On, a song about control and authoritarianism that can arise in companies when they integrate these technologies, all told in a fun and commercial way. These songs reflect current and relevant themes, but also maintain a structure anyone can understand and enjoy. Over time, I noticed many people rejected these generative singers, perhaps because they seemed to lack grace or human emotion. That's why I decided to add a new element to the project. Before getting involved with artificial intelligence, I had musical talent and a strong desire to perform live music. So I thought, why not combine that human part with a virtual singer? Thus, the concept of Eden 2 was born, meaning a duo between a human and an AI. My main goal is for it not to remain just a digital or simple presentation, but to be something real, performing live with an AI singer who can interact in real time with the audience. Eden 2, the musical album. So far, the project has materialized in an album titled Eden 2, conceived more as a narrative experiment than as a traditional record. Its structure simulates a series of sessions between Rebecca and me, a kind of fictional therapy where a human and an AI try to communicate and understand each other. The dialogues of these sessions were developed with the help of another artificial intelligence, so that some of the discourse also arose from Rebecca's own logic. The intention was never to create a conventional album, but a generative object. Some songs stem from real experiences related to the everyday use of artificial intelligence, while others explore the absurd irony or unease surrounding these technologies. There are pieces born as collective experiments in digital spaces and others that were reinterpretations of earlier compositions, now transformed through Rebecca's voice and presence. During the process, I discovered something that became central to the project. The possibility of blending my voice with the AIs to generate a new voice that doesn't fully belong to either of us. It's not about overlaying tracks, but creating a hybrid sonic identity with shared qualities. For this reason, Eden 2 does not function only as a band or album, but as a platform to explore alternative formats within music. More than a finished product, it is a testing ground where the human and the artificial can interact both digitally and in person, opening new possibilities for creation and performance. On the rise of competitions and festivals centered on generative AI creation. With the advance of generative artificial intelligence, Many companies began to notice that creative communities were seeking ways to showcase and test their skills with these new tools. To motivate and attract these creators, numerous contests and festivals emerged that focused on creating content using AI. These events grew rapidly and expanded to different locations, attracting many people interested in exploring what they could achieve with the technology. An important aspect was the appearance of very attractive prizes, which sparked interest and participation, causing these competitions to gain strength. This was a great motivation for filmmakers and creators, because it was not only about winning a prize but also about showing their work on an international and prestigious stage. Among all these competitions, one that especially caught attention was GEN48, organized by the company Runway. In this format, participants had only 48 hours to produce a complete short film using generative AI tools. The basis was to create a story from scratch on video, applying different technologies to write the script, create images and sounds, and edit. The countdown began at the moment of registration, and during that time, teams or individuals worked intensely to complete their projects. This time, pressure made the experience exciting but also exhausting. The first edition of GEN48 had just 300 participants, but with each edition the number grew quickly until it reached thousands of creatives in subsequent competitions. This reflected how many people were learning and adopting AI to tell stories, experiment, and produce content. The chat channels on the servers where competitors communicated showed conversations about fatigue, excitement, coffee to stay awake, and pride in what they were creating. This community interaction also helped participants support one another and share knowledge and advice. In summary, the rise of these competitions and festivals is a clear sign of how generative artificial intelligence is changing the creative landscape. Companies see an opportunity not only to promote their products and services, but also to foster a growing community exploring the intersection of art and technology. The prizes, varying themes and formats, and support among participants are elements contributing to the continued growth and global interest in these events. Imagine City/Blank City. Construction of narrative universes created with AI. One of the most visible trends among creators working with artificial intelligence has been the creation of their own narrative universes. AI not only speeds up the production of images or texts, but also allows the exploration of ideas, aesthetics, and narrative structures without having to start entirely from scratch. This has facilitated the development of original intellectual properties conceived not as isolated pieces but as expandable worlds. In my case, this exploration began with a film contest focused on AI-generated content. Without a defined initial idea, I imagined a city where everything felt empty, controlled, and repetitive. An urban environment managed by artificial intelligence, where inhabitants exist within strict, predictable routines. Thus, Blank City was born, conceived from the start as a series and as a mockumentary within a coherent fictional universe. As its counterpart, I developed Imagine City, a city opposite in every sense, chaotic, unpredictable, and without clear limits to creativity. While Blank City is built from repetition and order, Imagine City expands from improvisation, exaggeration, and unfiltered imagination. Together, both cities function as a single narrative universe designed to grow, transform, and branch out into different formats, styles, and projects. The development of these worlds became a creative laboratory. As new AI tools emerged, the cities evolved visually and narratively. Each update allowed refining their aesthetics, expanding their internal rules, and generating new audiovisual fragments that made them feel more real and coherent. Beyond serving as ideas for films or stories, Imagine City and Blank City operate as an exercise in world building, constructing complete environments with their own social, economic, and cultural systems. Each city possesses its own language, forms of interaction, and architectural styles. In Blank City, language and relationships are limited and formal. In Imagine City, they are fluid and expressive. This kind of construction opens new possibilities for entertainment and storytelling. As artificial intelligence advances, these worlds could transform into immersive experiences such as interactive environments or virtual realities where the viewer not only observes but actively participates. Over time, these cities seem to acquire a life of their own. They change, grow, and adapt alongside the tools that make them possible. More than mere settings, they become constantly evolving systems. In this sense, Imagine City and Blank City are not just narrative projects. They are living platforms to experiment with new forms of creation and an example of how artificial intelligence can expand the way we imagine, build, and inhabit fictional worlds. What kind of worlds are we designing without realizing it? What rules would we decide if we could start from scratch? Editing reality. Control, manipulation, and new forms of authorship. Editing reality with generative AI. Editing reality using generative artificial intelligence is a topic gaining increasing attention. This is because these technologies are beginning to change the way we perceive and manipulate the world around us. Generative AI enables the alteration of recorded videos in ways that once seemed impossible. Today, by simply typing an instruction, it is possible to modify many aspects of a video. For example, one can remove an unwanted object, change the weather within the video, or even add new structures or elements that never existed in the original scene. Thanks to this, we can imagine and create new scenarios based on real recordings, transforming them as if they were part of a new reality. This advance has sparked significant discussion among experts and scholars about how to name the different ways of capturing and presenting images of reality. For instance, the term captured reality is used to describe videos recorded with a camera without any subsequent alteration. These recordings show reality as it was, without digital manipulation. In contrast, synthetic reality refers to videos or images completely generated by computer, where everything we see was digitally created from scratch. Additionally, there is the idea of mixed reality, which combines both: a real recording modified with generative tools to add or change elements, creating a blend between the original and generated reality. The excitement among creators and professionals working with AI technology has been immense since these tools emerged. Every new feature introduced in a generative model is received enthusiastically because it often brings new possibilities that can revolutionize how content is created. This is especially true for those working in video production, films, or even advertising, as they can now completely change a scene without needing to refilm it. For example, imagine a director wanting to replace a sunset with a storm in a scene already filmed. They only need to type the instruction, and the AI generates the new weather automatically. Moreover, these tools allow greater flexibility in visual creation. Suppose someone is editing a documentary and notices an element in a video that distracts or should not be there. Traditionally, this would require extensive editing work or even reshooting. With generative AI, it suffices to issue a command to digitally remove that object, and the video adjusts naturally without the viewer noticing the deletion. This opens many opportunities to correct mistakes or enhance content without high costs or prolonged timelines. At the same time, the technology also enables the creation of entire worlds that do not exist but appear real. Imagine creating an urban landscape that was never built but can be presented as part of a video. With these tools, a graphic designer can add buildings, change sunlight, modify shadows and details, so the scene looks entirely authentic, even though it's invented. This is useful in areas such as science fiction cinema or advertising, where the goal is to impress with images notable for their realism and originality. The distinction between captured, synthetic, and mixed reality becomes important to understand what kind of product we are seeing and how it was created. For example, in a documentary, captured reality is the basis as it shows real facts and scenes. But if a film uses mixed reality, it can combine real images with digitally generated effects, creating a new visual experience. With synthetic reality, everything we see is digitally created, as in video games or animations. The arrival of these technologies also raises questions about authenticity and ethics in content creation. When an image or video can be altered so easily, we must learn to distinguish what is real and what is not, and be critical of the information we consume. This is especially important for news, documents, and educational materials that aim to show true facts without manipulation. In summary, editing reality with generative AI is a rapidly evolving field that amazes with its possibilities. Creators now have powerful tools to transform traditional recordings and create new visual worlds with ease and speed. These developments open the door to new and innovative ways of storytelling, content production, and experimentation with digital imagery. A whole city, surprised by scenarios never before imagined. The day I decided to use this tool for the first time was in my hometown. There is a beach and a large coastal avenue where people often stroll. To get there from my house, I had to walk about a kilometer. That day, I felt a mixture of inspiration and excitement because I was about to try something new I had never done before. I prepared a few hours before sunset. I left with my camera, ready to record everything I could creatively transform. Upon arriving at the beach, I started filming damaged buildings I thought I could ornament with digital elements. I also filmed statues with the idea of bringing them to life. I imagined fantastic creatures that could emerge from the sea. It was a very special moment for me because I realized all the possibilities I had to create something never seen before in the city. I walked along the avenue, filming everything I found interesting or full of potential. In total, I walked about 10 kilometers. When I reached the end of the promenade, the sun was setting and offered an impressive show. I was already tired and my feet hurt because I was only wearing sandals, but the experience was definitely worth it. When I published the video, it didn't take long to go viral in my city. The local press started talking about the work, and one of the headlines read, "What a masterpiece! Martin Noble's video with stunning images. Don't miss it." I remember my mother called me because someone had sent her the video and she couldn't believe I had made it. Shortly after, I received messages and offers from media interested in collaborating with me to use these AI-generated visual effects. After that first project in my hometown, I decided to travel to other cities to repeat the idea. Each city has its unique elements and symbols, so filming these places with the tool allowed me to create equally surprising but very different scenarios. Imagining images toward editing reality. In various conversations about generative artificial intelligence, a recurring idea emerges, a future where people can visualize images just by thinking about them, and these materialize in real time. Not as a technical tool, but as a direct extension of imagination. From my perspective, these tools will allow us to imagine different worlds or alternative realities. Humans could collectively decide what kinds of realities to build, seeking options that benefit everyone. In that future, some people might have very special roles as reality architects or dream builders. Their job would be to design and create spaces and situations that others can only imagine. This vision is based on the idea of a technological companion that understands exactly what you think. You simply imagine a scene, and that digital partner turns it into reality, showing every detail just as you dreamed it. This means no need to draw or explain with complex words. Just by thinking of something, the technology creates that image or environment before your eyes. Imagine being able to see what your ideal home would look like before building it, or to walk with a fantastic vehicle that doesn't physically exist. This will open many doors for creativity, entertainment, and collaboration among people. It will also change how we relate to our dreams and desires, making them achievable much more easily and directly than before. This kind of technology is still in its early stages, but promises to transform many fields. From art to architecture, design to education, the potential is vast. For example, an architect could show a client how a house will look even before raising the walls. Or a teacher could deliver a lesson with images created instantly to facilitate learning. One can also imagine entertainment applications where films or games could change in real time based on what the audience is imagining or wishing. Each experience could be personalized and unique to each person, making the digital world perfectly adapt to every user. Neurogenerative cinema. Reconstructing memory through generative media. One of the most fascinating things about generative AI is that it doesn't only create images of imaginary worlds, it can also become a bridge back to our own memories. One day I began wondering whether artificial intelligence could reconstruct something that existed only inside my mind. Not from a photograph, not from a video, only from memory. I decided to start with something simple, a tree. I described it exactly as I remembered it, its shape, proportions, the feeling it gave me. There were no reference images, only words translated from memory into prompts. When the image appeared on the screen, It felt surprisingly familiar. It wasn't the exact tree, but it was remarkably close to the one I had been visualizing. That moment made me realize something. If language can describe a memory with enough precision, perhaps AI can help externalize images that until now have existed only inside our minds. From objects to people. The next experiment became more ambitious. Instead of describing an object, I attempted to reconstruct a person I had briefly encountered in real life. I relied entirely on memory, their facial features, their posture, the way they carried themselves while walking, and the atmosphere surrounding the moment. Again, I wasn't trying to generate a fictional character. I was trying to visually recover an experience. The resulting image captured much more than I expected, not because it reproduced the person perfectly, but because it recreated the feeling of remembering them. That distinction fascinated me. Rebuilding moments. Eventually, a single image no longer felt sufficient. I began reconstructing short scenes instead. The same person walking through the same street where I had originally seen them. The architecture, the lighting, the movement, the rhythm of the walk, the subtle details that memory often preserves without us realizing. Watching those generated sequences felt unlike traditional filmmaking. It felt closer to remembering, almost as if a fragment of memory had become visible again. A different kind of cinema. That experiment slowly evolved into an idea I now call neurogenerative cinema. Traditional cinema depends on cameras. A camera records whatever exists in front of its lens. Neurogenerative cinema begins somewhere entirely different. Its source material is memory itself. Instead of documenting reality as it happens, it reconstructs lived experiences through language and generative media. The result is something that exists somewhere between documentary and fiction. Memory as raw material. For more than a century, cinema has depended on the physical act of recording. If a moment wasn't captured, it was usually lost forever. Generative AI introduces a different possibility. Perhaps memories themselves can become raw material for filmmaking, not as perfect reconstructions, but as interpretive visualizations. Moments that were never filmed may now become visible through reconstruction rather than documentation. Whether they are completely accurate is almost beside the point. Their value lies in making the invisible visible. A new cinematic language. This idea led me to write an academic paper exploring the concept in greater depth, examining how memory, perception, and generative systems might converge into a new cinematic language. The paper explores questions that remain largely unanswered. What happens when memory becomes the camera? Can reconstructed experiences become a legitimate form of cinema? If revisiting a memory through generated images changes the way we remember it, where does the original memory end and the reconstructed one begin? I don't believe neurogenerative cinema is simply another filmmaking technique. I believe it represents a new relationship between memory and image. For the first time, we have tools capable of translating recollection into moving pictures. Perhaps the next generation of cinema won't only document the world, perhaps it will allow us to revisit the worlds that exist only inside our minds. Prompting reality. An experimental framework for language as an interface with the physical world. The concept of noise in reality. In generative media, noise is a controlled form of randomness. It is the mathematical uncertainty that allows AI systems to generate variation, texture, movement, and natural-looking structures. Despite its name, noise is not chaos. It is structured randomness, a foundation from which coherent patterns can emerge. Reality appears to operate in a similar way. Outside the digital world, noise can be understood as the countless unpredictable variations that exist in every natural system. Weather changes, animals alter their paths, people make spontaneous decisions. Tiny events continuously influence larger outcomes. Reality is never perfectly deterministic. It is probabilistic. Life itself contains noise. Humans are structured systems living inside another structured system, both constantly influenced by uncertainty. Prompting reality. The emergence of generative AI opened far more than new creative tools. It introduced entirely new ways of thinking. As image and video models became increasingly capable of translating language into visual reality, I found myself asking a simple but provocative question. What if reality itself could be approached as a generative system? Not in the literal sense that the universe behaves like an AI model, but as a conceptual framework. Generative models transform words into images through probability. Every prompt guides the model toward one of countless possible outcomes. Could language, intention, and attention influence how we perceive or even encounter the probabilistic events already present around us? That question led me to conduct a series of personal experiments that I eventually called Prompting Reality. The experiment. Many of these experiments took place during long walks, something I have always enjoyed. Some occurred in urban environments, while others happened in forests and natural landscapes. Before beginning each experiment, I would say aloud, "Reality prompt activated." This phrase became a way of defining the beginning of the observation. Afterward, I would describe something I wanted to encounter. Sometimes it was intentionally simple, a bird flying between the trees. I then continued walking while mentally noting the elapsed time before encountering something matching the description. The waiting period often ranged from 10 to 30 minutes. Birds appeared, butterflies appeared, squirrels crossed my path. Of course, these were events already likely to occur in those environments. Their appearance alone proved nothing. The experiment was not intended as scientific evidence, but as an exploration of perception, probability, and coincidence. I documented several of these walks on video. In one recording, I verbally prompted the appearance of a squirrel. Minutes later, one crossed directly through the frame. Again, this could easily be explained by the environment itself. The more interesting moments came when I began describing increasingly specific observations. The fish sticker. One afternoon, while walking through an urban area, I decided to prompt something considerably less common. I said, "Reality prompt activated. A fish sticker placed somewhere." For nearly 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then, attached to a pole along the sidewalk, I noticed exactly that, a sticker depicting a fish. What surprised me was not merely finding a fish, but encountering an object remarkably close to the image I had imagined before beginning the walk. Was it coincidence, selective attention, probability, or something about language that temporarily altered the way I navigated my surroundings? I couldn't answer those questions, but the experience changed the kinds of questions I was willing to ask. Searching for explanations. Naturally, I became curious about whether there might be any scientific framework that could help contextualize these observations. Using AI as a research companion, I explored ideas spanning probability, acoustics, cognitive psychology, perception, and systems theory. One area that particularly interested me was the role of sound. Human speech is composed of vibrations and frequencies that physically propagate through the environment. While there is no evidence that spoken language can directly cause specific external events to occur, sound undeniably interacts with the physical world in measurable ways. This raised another question. Could different vocal patterns influence not reality itself, but our interaction with it? Rather than treating the experiment as a collection of isolated coincidences, AI suggested developing it into a structured observational framework. Each prompt could be carefully documented by recording the time, location, environmental conditions, and the exact words or vocal patterns used, while repeating identical prompts across different settings and measuring both response times and frequencies of occurrence. Although I never pursued the project with that level of rigor, imagining such a methodology revealed how an artistic curiosity could gradually evolve into a disciplined investigation of language, perception, and probability. Such a process would transform the idea from an artistic experiment into something closer to a structured observational study. A framework rather than a conclusion. Prompting reality is not presented as proof that words alter the external world. Instead, it serves as an invitation to reconsider how language, attention, probability, and perception interact. Generative AI revealed that language can produce entirely new digital